In this lesson, we are going to learn how we can set up our Dagger object for throwing using something called prefabs within Unity. Now, what is a prefab? A prefab allows us to create an object with scripts or components on it and then group all of those items together into one container, which is your prefab. So a prefab is just a very powerful way of customizing your own specific objects that you can spawn at any point in your game that'll already have all the properties and scripts on them as you wish. So we're going to go in and see how powerful this can be and make this Dagger object that our character is going to be throwing. So first step, let's import our Dagger. So let's go into our game art and let's go to our environment and let's hunt down this Dagger here. Let's drag this into our game level here. Alright, and now what do we want to do? We just want to set it up to look as we want it to be positioned the way we want it to be when it spawns into our game and he throws it. So when he throws it, I want it to be rotated 90 degrees here. Oops, rotation, -90. Alright, so now I want to shoot out forward like this. And in terms of size, it looks maybe just a little bit big. So let's just go down 0.9. That looks more. It's the tiniest adjustment, but I think it looks better. Okay, so there's our Dagger all set up. And now what do we need to do is we have the Dagger set up. So let's continue working on that in a sec. But next we need to actually create a spawn point for this Dagger. Where is this going to be created in the game? We need to tell Unity that. And I want it to shoot out from our character. So let's go and let's collapse all this stuff here. Just going to click on my character. I'm going to create a new empty game object. And let's move this over to when he throws it. I'm assuming his arm's going to be around here when he's done with his throw animation. So I'm going to keep this spawn point right there. And I'm just going to call this Dagger spawn point. Alright, so that's all set up. Now let's just quickly parent this to our character. There we go. So now we have it all set up where our Dagger is going to launch from. Awesome. And just actually one more thing I want to do is in here, I'm just going to clean up these values here. See, yeah, the y-axis, let's just go like so, and z-axis, I don't need anything there. Alright, so that's all cleaned up that is parented to our character. So we're all set up and ready to go here. We have all our things in place. We have our Dagger spawn point, which is just kicking around here, and then we have our Dagger all set up and rotated and scaled as we wish. Now at this point there's just one problem. And that one problem is our Dagger spawn point, as you can see, the scale is all at 1 and our rotation's all at 0. But if we look at our Dagger here, we have a rotation at -90 because we wanted our Dagger to be in this position upon creation, and our scale's a little bit smaller. And what's going to happen is this Dagger, when it's created, it's going to take the values of the position of this spawn point and apply it to that new prefab object. So it's going to go ahead and rotate our Dagger back upwards and scale it back up. So I don't want that. What I want to do right now is I want to make it so this Dagger object, all the scale parameters are at 1 and all the rotations are at 0, and it's still going to look the same. Now how can we do this? Let's just go and create another empty game object, and I'm going to call this one Dagger underscore PFB for prefab. This will be our main prefab parent object here. So I'm just going to reset all those to 0, and now we have our Dagger prefab, and then I'm also just going to quickly grab this and just say Dagger. I don't need environment Dagger there. So let's go in here and parent it to this Dagger prefab, which is all at 0. And now that that's done, I can go ahead, I'm just going to set all my positionals in here to 0, just so it centers it to that new game object here. There we go. Perfect. So now it's all centered to that, and now we have it. We have our Dagger prefab object, and we're going to actually choose to create this object, this parent object, at that spawn point, and it's going to be acceptable to have the rotations all at 0 and our scales all at 1. So now we have this object all set up and ready to go, and now let's move on and start applying all the components we want to this object. So what do we need to make this object interactive in our scene? Well, first off, we're going to need a good old box collider. Alright, so let's go box collider 2D, and now let's just edit the size of this guy, make it match up to this Dagger object here. Okay, right in there, just the blade, that's the dangerous part. So now we have it, so we can set up so when this collides with objects, we're all good to go. And now, whenever we create this, we want this to be affected by gravity as well. So let's go ahead and add a rigid body. Let's go rigid body 2D. Perfect. So now we have our rigid body attached to this, and I'm also going to set it to interpolate. Alright, so we're good to go. So now when this dagger is going to be created, it's going to have the box collider and the rigid body, and it's going to be positioned at 0, 0, 0 all the way through and look correct. So now what do we need to do? Let's just create one custom script for this dagger, because there's going to be one little issue here where it's going to say when this dagger is created, it's just going to stay in our game. There's nothing telling it to delete or get rid of this object as we don't need it. And I don't want to just be throwing all these daggers and having them stay in the scene and keep building up and using all our memory with just useless objects. So we need to create a quick little script here that's going to say when this object is created, give it about 1.5 seconds and then delete and just clear itself from this game. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly here. So let's go down, let's go to our scripts, and let's create a new script here. Let's go create C# script. Alright, and then let's name this script here. I'm going to call this one Dagger Cleanup, as that's what it's going to be doing for us. So let's open up MonoDevelop here and start typing away here. Alright, there's MonoDevelop, and let's expand this and clean up some other scripts here. Alright, so we're now fresh. Then I'm also going to zoom in a couple times here for you. Alright, so now let's clean this brackets up here. And let's start at the top. Now at the top here, we're going to create a variable. And this is going to hold the timer length before our dagger actually deletes itself. So I'm going to go ahead and create this variable now. This is going to be a public float. And I'm going to call it lifespan. And this is going to equal, let's start at 1.5 seconds. See how that works in our game there. Alright, and now let's go down. And let's go to our start function here. Because what we want to do is we want to say destroy this object after this lifespan timer is done, and we want to start the timer as soon as this object is created in our game. So as soon as this dagger prefab gets created, the start function is going to read the script, and then it's going to go to the start function and perform whatever actions in there right away. So let's just use a simple command here called destroy, and then I'm going to say destroy what? I want to destroy the game object, local game object that this is attached to, based off of the float value of time. Alright, and that already has that time.delta time calculated in this destroy function, which is great. So I want to use lifespan here, based off our lifespan. Alright, so this here is going to destroy, remove our dagger from our game over the lifespan time. Okay, perfect. And we don't need an update function for this script, so let's clean that up. Very simple, very quick, easy script. So now I'm just going to close off this, and then let's assign it to our dagger here. Dagger prefab. There we go. So we now have our rigid body, our box collider, and our dagger cleanup script. Alright, and now the moment we've all been waiting for. We've been talking about prefabs this whole time, but we haven't even created one. We've just set up an object to be created as a prefab. So let's go ahead in here and let's say, let's just go game art. So let's just right click and let's say create a prefab. Simple as that. And now you have this container here. And what do we want to call this prefab? I'm going to call it the exact same as this object in our scene here. So I'm going to say dagger underscore prefab here. Alright, and now you can see, here's our prefab. It's our empty container. So right now you can tell it's an empty container because it displays as a white cube. As soon as we apply something to it, its color is going to change and it's going to look a little bit more full here. So let's just go to apply any object or prefab that you have set up. You just select them in your hierarchy panel, drag it over, and pop it on that prefab. And now we have our actual prefab object. So I can go ahead and you can see this is all blue now. It's saying this is your prefab. So let's just go and delete it because we don't need it in our scene anymore. There we go, because we have it all here. So this is really cool. So as you can see what we have, this is our prefab object, and when we click on this you can see all those parameters and scripts are all applied. So what we're going to do is when we choose to spawn this dagger, we're going to spawn this prefab and it's going to bring in this object with all these already set up. So now if you watch, even if I drag this in, It comes in at the right orientation with all these things in here. Pretty awesome. So I'm just going to go and delete that again because we don't need it yet. And there we go. We have gone through. We've created our spawn point for the dagger. We've set up our dagger object. We've seen how we can position it as we want and get our values back to 0. We've also seen how all the components that we need to apply to this and how we can delete objects from our game using script. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to learn how we can instantiate this object upon our throwing animation and launch this dagger out. It's going to be really exciting getting into how we can actually interactively bring new objects into our game. So we're going to go ahead and learn that in the next lesson. I'll see you there.